Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto found out about the Uzumaki clan and was a prodigy. A small twist of fate made him aware of his heritage, unsealing the legacies his parents left behind. Graduating from the academy at age 7, he's well on his way. He found a kindred spirit in Uchiha Itachi, and his cousin Shisui's along for the ride. They're on the path to unsealing the legacy left by their ancestors, both the dark and the light. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 19, 19th Legacy. Never a building looked so menacing in his imagination, and it was not even an enemy's hideout or anything similar. In fact, Senju's old hideout infested by enemy nin was more inviting in his opinion. It was not like he was scared of re-entering Shinobi Academy after the last errand that required him to come here and after his graduation too. More like he was so not looking forward to deal with troublesome former teachers and classmates if he was unfortunate enough to run into them. He let himself to enjoy the luxury of having 10 seconds to stare at the several buildings of the academy and ended his gaze on one that was adjoined to the Hokage Tower, while taking a leaf out of Nara's book. Rather than hate or fear, his feeling towards academy was more like Nara to troublesome things. Never mind the fact that his experience in spending time with Nara was limited to Iwasan. It was so troublesome. What a pain. He didn't feel like coming here at all. Look. The swing was ever present and looking as depressing as ever. Whose bright idea was it to put up one single swing over there and nothing else? He had been fond of that swing before the revelation and avoided it since then. Sure, it was a petty reason, but mainly Kurama taunting him. You know what? I don't care. I refuse to see my vessel brooding in broad daylight. You make a very sorry picture of a depressed brat with sitting on that swing. Apparently Kurama took him sitting on that swing dejectedly as a personal insult. Naruto since then had developed an unexplainable loathing towards the swing. Sure, it was a reminder of his darkest period, yet why the heck was he so tempted to plot its destruction? Naruto-sama. Shit, 10 seconds was over. Come on, we don't want to make them wait. He beckoned the rest of his entourage to follow. Then he realized he was feeling sluggish just making his way past the gate. He was turning to Nara here. Wonderful. In another part of Konoha. Maybe. He was cut off by a stick of dango shoved to his open mouth. His cousin wiggled an eyebrow at him. Don't you dare, there is no maybe. Naruto needs us in academy. Seriously Itachi, he will live. Of course he will, but chew that first, cousin. Itachi did so, chewing and swallowing the first ball of sweetness. And the dinner is tonight. Shisui rolled his eyes. What makes you think that the academy was going to give him a trauma recap and make him show up like a traumatized victim tonight in your house? He ignored Itachi's protest that no one was thinking about trauma. He is not traumatized by the academy, more like what all of us are thinking. Why the heck had I been here for years? And yeah, for some of us it's a waste of time. He was not a pro early graduate and was not pushing meteoric rise in ninja rank. In fact, he thought that the academy was good for Sasuke. It taught the kid how to make friends, socialize outside of their clan and so on. However, to him and Itachi, there was no such thing because their academy years was close to the tragic 10th of October and no one wanted to be their friends. The teachers, while mostly unbiased to Uchiha children, were all showering them with praises for academic achievement and cementing their status as teacher's pet. So there was no childhood, no making friends and socializing with anyone outside of their clan. So excuse Shisui and his cousin if they had graduated as early as they could the moment they saw how pointless it was to stay any longer. Which resulted to them being placed with complete strangers, and obviously no one liked being upstaged by younger kids. Shisui somehow managed his genin days by being an okay guy even to his genin teammates, yet there still existed a distance between them and he preferred training with Itachi than with them. They were comrades, but if Shisui was being honest, it was hard to relate to his teammates. Itachi on the other hand developed a completely professional relationship with his teammates regardless of Kunoichi and his instructor's effort to get the prodigy to open up. Naruto was the worst, considering he completely closed himself up from people outside his little circle of friends and subordinates and got away because he was former ward of Hokage-sama. Then again, Naruto could hardly trust people to treat him as a person. It was a completely sound concern that Naruto didn't believe Green Genin from Academy to treat him as a teammate. Shisui sighed, rather than a team of prodigies, we're more like a team of socially retarded guys. Which explained why Sandaime was so relieved to put them together. HN. Shisui was snapped out of his musing by Itachi, who was on his 10th stick of dango, and wondered where his cousin put all those sweets. Itachi was not a big eater, but he seemed to have a second stomach for sweets. The reason why he often called out that Itachi was like a girl. Because when Itachi was stressed, he ate sweets as his comfort food. Relax, at least. Naruto is teaching Sasuke's class. That halted Itachi from taking another bite. How do you know that? Because Sasuke is his third-year class. He informed the Uchiha heir, not sure how it's a logical choice, but they're the main target of this seminar. Of course Naruto would want to go down there himself. Itachi blinked, why do you make it sound like he is there to pick a fight? Then he added, as for why it's logical, children of Sasuke's age already have sufficient practice in writing and mathematics, and they're planned to graduate in 3 years. By the time they graduate, if they do well enough, they would already be a first Dan master for a while. Perfect for a first batch of proposed program to start their infield career. Itachi finished. Shisui frowned, I don't like how that sounds like they're guinea pig. In the loosest sense of word, they are, but it's not like they get nothing in return. In fact, they would be lucky to have early guidance for specialization, unlike us who have to figure it out ourselves. And that was always the hardest turning point of their career, branching out or specialize. If you put it like that. Konoha Academy. Iruka couldn't help but freeze when he saw the Jinchuriki of Kyuubi of all the people in the hallway, and talking to Yuzuru-Hasan and other 2 older shinobi. All of them were wearing the standard uniform of Sealing Division, which looked like a strange fusion of a kimono and a coat with a high collar and wide, short sleeve. Yuzuru-ha wore it like a kimono top, tying the waist part with a pale yellow sash, while the rest wore it as coat. It emphasized their perceived scholar image. He did a double take. The coat looked familiar, especially on the Jinchuriki, when he realized Yondaime wore a similar coat. That explained a lot. Apparently, his coat was a stylized version of Sealing Division's uniform. Does that mean Yondaime was part of Sealing Division? Yondaime was one of most prominent combat seal masters ever known in history. Yes, he was. Ah, Umino-san. Yuzuru-ha spotted him, thank you for dash. As one all seal masters frowned at him and he realized he was openly staring at the vessel of the Kyuubi. Much to his shock, he was quickly subjected to a wave of killing intent from them and he froze on the spot. For a moment he wondered whether they were going to kill him, they seemed like they wanted to. Didn't I tell you to go to your assigned classes already? Came the stern query that cut through the killing intent like a knife. Well. Yuzuru-ha and the other 2 seal masters tensed, young master, I am sorry. Oh, look at the time. The Jinchuriki pointedly ignored the apology, staring at a nearby clock. Then he beamed at them, giving a smile so bright Iruka had to blink repeatedly. The seal masters, however, melted at the sight. We don't want our future comrades to wait, do we? SAA, come on, go to your assigned classes. He gave Yuzuru-ha a gentle pat on the shoulder. I am counting on you guys. Hi, the seal masters quickly left, all of them looking very happy for some reason. What just happened? Iruka wondered inwardly. Though he tried his best, he couldn't help but tense when the Uzumaki turned to face him, and looked at him with sky-blue eyes as if to pierce through him. For a moment Iruka considered apologizing, but for what? Staring too long? Looking like a mouse stared down by a snake? No matter how he phrased it, the apology wouldn't come out right. Umino-sensei right? He nodded stiffly, not expecting the other party to break the awkward silence first. Ah yes. I am Umino Iruka, Chunin, homeroom teacher of 3rd year class. He introduced himself. Including one's rank in their introduction was not a matter of pride in their profession but was a confirmation as to how comrades should address each other. After all, Konoha was a military organization first and foremost. The boy smiled at him, a much weaker smile, just a slight curve in his lips. I am Uzumaki Naruto. Chunin. He was in the same rank as Iruka. 4rd Dan Seal Master. Wasn't 15 years old Takuza also 4th Dan rank? I will be in your care for today. Ah, same here, thank you for coming today. He replied awkwardly, over here please, my class is on the 3rd floor. He said, turning around and led the Uzumaki to the nearest stair. He tried as subtle as he could to observe the Seal Master that was just a few steps behind him. Iruka had not mistaken the Jinchuriki for someone else it seemed, he was older but pretty much the same and hard to be missed. Bright blonde and spiky hair, blue eyes, and whisker-like marks on his cheeks, which was not too prominent because it was covered by long side bangs that framed his face. Iruka only saw the boy once or twice wreaking havoc with his pranks, but he was sure the boy was not this well-groomed like a clan child back then. Wait. He felt a little silly but he was pretty sure just yesterday he visited his parents' grave and noted they had passed away for 9 years. So, this boy he was supposed to be a 3rd-year academy student in Iruka's students' age group. Ano. Umino-san. He called out. Iruka stopped, ah yes Uzumaki-san. He called a 9-years-old kid with san, that was so. A calloused hand gestured to his left, where a very familiar door was embedded. You already passed your classroom. The Uzumaki pointed out. Oh right. Get your shit together, Iruka. A distracted shinobi is a dead shinobi. Trying to cover his slip-up he forced a grin to his face and slid the door open with a slam. Oha dash his instincts kicked in and in an instant his hand shot up to catch the object that was traveling towards his face, but it only found empty air. Clink clink clink. A golden chain made of pure chakra with comma-shaped blade on its tip wound itself around the chalk eraser faster than his hand. Frozen at the strange sight, Iruka turned around slowly and saw Uzumaki Naruto following him into the class. The chakra chain was sprouting out of his sleeve and seemingly disappeared within as it shortened, and the chalk eraser was safely dropped to his hand. Classic projectile, but uncreative. He commented. Iruka let the comment slide and glared at Kiba who else, and his band of misfits which consist of the brashest and loudest lot of his students. Didn't I tell you to behave? And you pull this prank on me? Kiba however only cowed a little, and Iruka was sure on Kiba's head he was being compared to Tsume. Iruka had to say he was not offended at all. Kiba thought he was nowhere as scary as Inyazuka Tsume. However, he was peeved that Kiba's attention wandered to their guest instead, who for some reason looked at the chalk eraser as if it held the secret of the universe. Who are you? Kiba asked. The Uzumaki didn't answer and instead asked back, you're the one who threw this. He eyed the crude-looking contraption made of kunai and flexible shinobi wire. Kiba puffed his chest proudly. Yeah. Me, Inyazuka Kiba. This eraser is a bad choice of a projectile considering your objective is most likely a prank and not aiming to harm your target. The blunt end of this eraser will make amusing injury rather than powdering people in chalk dust. Uzumaki pointed out loftily. Iruka blinked, and realized it was the handle of the eraser that was flying towards him rather than the soft foam part. Umino-san, may I borrow some of your chalk? Uzumaki asked, pointing at the box of chalk in various colors. He nodded numbly and for some reason Kiba and the rest of the class was eyeing the Jinchuriki warily. Which was perhaps because they were not used to mischief being responded by advice and correction rather than scolding. The Uzumaki took a handful of chalk in different color, pulled a stack of empty tag and began to draw a seal, then wrapped the tag around the chalks. All of this took less than a minute before the blonde opened the nearest window and much to their shock, chucked the wrapped chalk out. It suddenly burst into a colorful smoke and was flying, leaving a colorful trail in the air forming a spiral in rainbow color. Iruka could see majority of male students in his class were gaping at the spectacle. Whoa AA. And that's how to use chalk as a classic but creative choice of projectile. The Uzumaki finished, just now was a mundane combination of explosive and wind element seal. He was preparing another chalk wrapped in tag, this time it looked slightly different before tossing it up to the air. This time it formed a star-shaped cloud with colorful electric current. Wow, wicked. A civilian-born student of his commented in awe. Uzumaki clapped his hands together and the whole class including Iruka himself who had been put in stupor, snapped back to attention. Impromptu lesson on how to make an emergency flare done, shall we move on to the next lesson, Umino-sensei? In instance, the class broke to an uproar. How did you do that? It's so cool. I want to make that too. Iruka was quick to take control of his students. Get back to your seats first. Naruto dealt with the academy instructor with ease, as he had practiced unflappable persona like a pro. It was so easy to see the familiar look on Umino Iruka's eyes, pain, suspicion, and fear. Strangely, the hatred was not present in those eyes. So Naruto catalogued Iruka as one of those people who saw him as an unpleasant reminder, in which the man simply disliked being reminded of personal tragedy by his mere presence alone. Naruto, to be honest, had nothing against this type of people, and it was not like he could help being a reminder. Still, he had to admire the man's effort in trying to act professionally around him. It was pretty amusing to see how awkward and forced the man was, trying to be in control of his emotion and his students. Umino Iruka also had a temper, it seemed, since with one shout and a glare all his students scrambled to their seats as if Kurama was on their tails. He cleared his throat. Thank you, sensei. He kindly ignored the awkward stutter. As for will you learn how to do, I just did. The answer is we start now. Aside from a few exceptions, namely Aburame kid with bushy brown hair and that sleepy-looking Nara boy, they seemed enthusiastic. Beside the Aburame, Naruto spotted a familiar-looking boy with dark hair and eyes, like a mini version of his teammate save the funny duck butt part. Now I know why Itachi let his hair grow that long. The young Uchiha looked very attentive with his surrounding, a good trait for a shinobi. Another attentive kid was surprisingly the Nara, and unsurprisingly Haruno Sakura, who undoubtedly will end up under Yazuruha's tutelage one of these days. My name is classified, but you can call me sensei since I am teaching you now. He told them, and it sounded more like for convenience rather than military discretion. I am not sure you will be interested in my likes, and I dislike plenty of things. His eyes wandered to every crook and corner of their classroom. My dream is an ambitious one and I am working on it now, with enlightening all of you about the wonders of Fuinjutsu. Here and now we're going to write our imagination to a formula, tearing fabric of reality literally, and defy law of nature. All of that being just a part of the inner working of Fuinjutsu. So keep your eyes, ears, and mind open. He had their attention and this was another step towards their dream. Dango Shop. While they expected him to approach them sooner or later, they didn't expect Hatake Kakashi, the master of subtlety, to just walk to their table, take a seat on the unoccupied spot of the tatami platform and make his order to a passing waitress. Chadango, please, and tea. Hi, I will return shortly with your order. The waitress in a simple-looking kimono replied. Then he turned his attention to them, lone eye curved to something like a happy smile. Yo! Itachi and Shisui could never understand how their senior could be very expressive with just one eye. Yo, Kakashi-senpai. They returned. You don't wait at all, and here I thought you will let us off for a few days. The Umbu captain smiled again, just his eye curved to a happy curve. I would have, but it seems you guys are one of those hard-to-find fellows, no known favorite training ground, haunt or anyone closer than an acquaintance in regular force. Itachi and Shisui exchanged looks. You found us, it doesn't seem so hard. I am a very good tracker, Itachi-kun, Shisui-kun. Itachi exhaled softly, alright Kakashi-senpai, you do know that what happens in there, namely Umbu, stays there, so let's cut this short. Shisui nodded, yes, he is our friend, our closest friend, and he knows your sensei. Kakashi tensed a little at that. I see, he can't be older than 4 when Yondaime. Itachi and Shisui held on their stoic Uchiha mask firmly, never dreamt that we will thank Naruto's premature aging. Though in the other hand, it was almost hilarious how people keep making the wrong guess on Naruto's age. Though to be fair, Naruto sometimes acts like an old man. He hates Miha. Shisui couldn't help himself to let out an indignant scowl. Where did you get the idea? He had never met you before the last mission, and couldn't be bothered. Never met me, so, what? In his wording, it's hard to feel anything when you hardly interact with him. He doesn't hate you, but he doesn't like you in particular either. Shisui told him, and the Hatake looked like the Uchiha had just enlightened him about the truth of the universe. So don't treat him any differently the next time you see him. From what I see, perhaps both of you are happier without having any mutual acquaintance, especially if it's a hazard to our teamwork. His order arrived and the waitress placed a plate with 3 sticks of dango in green color and the silence stretched long. There was always awkwardness when Hatake Kakashi was in the company of Uchiha clan members, and even more so if the Uchiha in question were Shisui and Itachi. Because Kakashi never get over how he was the cause their Obitone never returning again. Especially since Kakashi would never forget the day he was faced by 2 pairs of onyx eyes asking where their favorite cousin was, and how he fumbled his way to tell the kids he was the idiot his cousin gave his life for. So yes, it was guilt on top of guilt. It always tired Shisui out, dealing with Hatake Kakashi because the guy never get over the dead. At last Kakashi picked up a stick of dango, and for one moment of curiosity Shisui wondered if Hatake was going to pull down that damned mask to eat. So, just act like yesterday never happened. Correction Kakashi-san. Itachi interrupted, just act like a captain of our team, no more no less. As for what you have been told, it's up to you what to make out of it. None of us but you have the right to decide that. His lone eye looked at them searchingly and for a moment they wondered if he saw a shadow of his dead teammate before he gave them a curt nod and his eye curved up. Shisui and Itachi belatedly realized 5 minutes after Kakashi left that their captain left them with his bill and the Hatake didn't take his mask off even once but managed to clean his dango somehow. Tachi. What? Does that bastard know Obitone always pays for our sweets? How ironic was it for him to make them pay for his food? Itachi scoffed, chewing his dango before swallowing. I doubt it, he was not interested in Obitone's private life before that mission, and if he did he would know Obitone never lied about his excuse. Go figures Hatake can't even pull imitating Obitone in his honor right. Shisui grumbled, resigned to pay Hatake's share. Why did he even bother to try? Coping mechanism, according to Naruto, that's. He drawled on, craning his head towards the 4th's face on the Hokage's mountain. His theory, and why he let Kakashi-san to get away with it. Shisui rolled his eyes at that. Obitone would be rolling in his grave now. Somewhere in a certain orange-masked Uchiha sneezed before hastily excusing himself from the meeting with the god of Omegakure. The unfortunate timing of his sneezing made the god and his angel wonder if the Uchiha was really immortal, if he still had a normal bodily mechanism like sneezing. Academy. In conclusion, Fuinjutsu is a shinobi art where you will spend copious amounts of time preparing outside of the field but it's going to be a boon in field. The Uzumaki finished. For example, Suiryuadon no Jutsu requires 48 hand seals in a nearby water source. Unless your name was Senju Tobirama. Any seal master worth their salt needs neither, as long as you have basic knowledge in elemental chakra and shape manipulation theory down, you can translate it into a seal formula and execute the technique with a seal and chakra alone. He inhaled softly, his voice lowered down to emphasize the importance of his next line. Fast execution and unpredictability are the main core of Fuinjutsu in combat. Your enemy can see your hand seal and predict what you are going to do and prepare, but whip out a seal and most of them wouldn't be able to discern the seal formula in combat fast enough to counter you. Then he added, but of course, all ninja arts as your instructor has taught you, have their plus and minus. Most ninjutsu only require hand seals and chakra, but do you understand the theory behind D-rank ninjutsu such as Henjin depth? Looking at the clueless looks of most of the students in class answered his question. While they could use Henj no Jutsu, they don't really get the working theory. Fuinjutsu gives you no such leeway. If you don't understand the theory behind the inner working of seal formula, you can't create any seal. There is a difference of a whole world between creating and using. He tapped the diagram he created on the blackboard, Nin, Tai, Gen, and Fuinjutsu in its own bubble. That is the cost of Fuinjutsu. One could argue it weighs more than what other more common ninja arts require. As for why Fuinjutsu until today is an obscure ninja art, do you think spending hours in workshop, poring over numerous theories, going through trial and error in each experiment is worth more than training outside? You can run laps and other exercises, with which no doubt your stamina and endurance will increase. Experimenting in Fuinjutsu, in the other hand, whether it will bear result or not will be up to question until you go through it to the end. Wow, he could see disappointment in their eyes clearly. Naruto had no intention to sugarcoat his lesson that Fuinjutsu is an art where you can't always expect result. It was not about repeating until you get it right like in other ninja arts, it would always be trial and error and you could still fail at it. Practice won't make it perfect, you could only get it right or wrong. There was no in between, and he who was hailed as prodigy in sealing art could honestly confess he met failure more than he met success. The reason why Uzumaki was a clan with an affinity for sealing? Because their life force and vitality made them more capable than normal shinobi to survive trial and error to meet the end result. As simple as that. However, time to throw a bone here. I believe you have known that the greatest jutsu inventor Konoha ever produced is the Nidaime Hokage, Senju Tobirama, and also Yondaime Hokage, Namikaze Minato. It's not an exaggeration to say that their knowledge in Fuinjutsu assisted them in creating their original techniques. Naruto expected rapt attention at the information he had just thrown, but for the first time Uchiha Sasuke was raising his hand. Yes. Is that something to do with the level of understanding theory of formula behind the seal? He asked. He was pretty sharp. True, it's as simple as that, because when you're training as a seal master, we're not going to just teach you theory but also the right mindset. He inhaled softly. The mindset of a seal master is, we see impossibility as a challenge, limitation is merely an illusion not worth considering. So is it a wonder we're very imaginative and creative in creating jutsu? He asked them. Then a hand, almost reluctant, rose, but the owner's eyes shining with challenge surprised Naruto. Then, is it possible to recreate my clan's signature jutsu with sealing art? The Nara kid? It seemed Naruto's words piqued his curiosity enough for it to triumph his laziness. Nara clan's hidden? Naruto narrowed his eyes. This boy is too curious to the point he is wide awake or his father put him up for this. Naruto knew a challenge when he saw one, and the political repercussion following how he answered this. I will tell you the same answer to any question on the line of, can you do this or that with Fuinjutsu? I already lost count how many times people ask me that. He shook his head exasperatedly. It's possible in theory, with the right motivation, theory, and resource. After all, we have ripped fabric or reality with space-time ninjutsu that's based on Fuinjutsu, namely Hiraishin, ages ago. So, do you think yin-based Hiden is more impossible than that, was unsaid but implied. I will proudly say, studying Fuinjutsu opens multiple doors of possibilities for you, however, we're not without a boundary we set upon ourselves. Narashikamaru narrowed his eyes, and what boundary are you speaking of, sensei? That even if you can bend the world to your whim with brush, ink, and paper, ultimately you're still human. Naruto stated in a stern voice that left no room for argument. This is true for any shinobi, I suppose. The moment you forget your humanity, you're a danger to yourselves and others, and the power you hold makes you a monster because it controls you instead of the other way around. He let the silence stretch long, filled with muffled whispers and nervous gulps. So once again I will tell you this, the door to sealing division is open for all of you. Whether you can endure it in mind and body is still up to question. He pointedly ignored a number of offended brats. That's all for today. I will see those who decide they can follow this thorny path soon in Sealing Tower, and have a nice day, future shinobi of Konoha. Umino Iruka, who had been in a daze but paying a rapt attention for the last 1 hour and a half, snapped back to reality. It was over. Just now it felt like he was a kid who just found the whole new world of ninjutsu back in academy days. He was entrapped by Uzumaki's lesson about the sealing arts. Thank you for the time you spared for us today, Umino-sensei. He smiled at him and Iruka returned it with his own, albeit an awkward one. As they walked out of the class, Iruka asked Mizuki, who was not so subtly glaring at the Jinchuriki, to take charge of the class while he escorted Uzumaki to the other seal masters. Iruka didn't know what possessed him to walk the Jinchuriki through the academy, because obviously the blonde had been here and was unlikely to get lost. Still, his unexplainable action aside, he was more frustrated by his incapability to act normal. He knew acting genial to Uzumaki was a lost cause, but he should be able to act professionally at least. He hated these illogical negative emotions in his chest in regards to the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. However, it was hard not to be reminded of red chakra ablaze like flame, 9 tails swinging and roar of calamity this blonde boy contained within. A 9-year-old boy who didn't ask for his responsibility and could do nothing about it. On second thought, he could in theory. It was a sombering thought. Uzumaki was a seal master and undoubtedly a genius if at the age of 9 he was entrusted responsibility to teach. The boy himself said everything was possible in theory when it comes to Fuinjutsu. This boy. Anu. Umino-san. He jolted. If it's possible, would you mind to not stare too much when my fellow seal masters are around? Iruka sputtered, I am sorry. I didn't mean to. A wan smile painted on his lips. This is the first time I got an apology for being stared at. You're not a bad person after all. He clamped his mouth shut, embarrassed by the dimmed redness that crawled up his cheeks. The blonde looked at him straight in the eyes and said, I am Uzumaki Naruto, a seal master and shinobi of Konoha. What you believe me to be doesn't concern me at all. Umino Iruka-san. Young master. A feminine voice called out. Iruka didn't miss the glare from Uchiha, who quickly dragged the blonde to her side. The other seal masters apparently had finished their own session and were glaring at him. Thankfully, there was no killing intent this time, but their glare sure looked like they would kill him if he did even as much as breathe the wrong way in the Uzumaki's vicinity. Uchiha. The Uzumaki started. This time Uchiha didn't back down. Do acknowledge your place, Umino-san. After all, you're speaking to the heir of the Uzumaki clan. Uzumaki clan. The timing couldn't be worse when one of his co-workers who was in charge of a higher class sauntered over to his side, and sputtered at the sight of Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, even worse than him. You. The effect was instant. Watch your mouth. One of the seal masters snarled at his co-worker. It was unnerving how in one moment they were so amiable and now they were so hostile. It began to dawn on Iruka that perhaps Uzumaki was not a random surname chosen for the Jinchuriki. The Jinchuriki for some reason was looking at Iruka's co-worker with thoughtful look, before shrugging, and said, It's time to go back, don't make a scene more than what we already did. Uchiha, Mikumo, Kagari. At their name being called, the 3 seal masters tensed. We still have work to do, remember? The one with ash-colored hair and red-brown eyes looked like he wanted to argue, but, young master. At the protest the Uzumaki inclined his head and Iruka's breath hitched at the sight. Those sky-like blue eyes looked so cold and condescending to them. Kagari, like I always said, it's not worth it, so don't waste our time, we have better things to do in our workshop. Something in his words pleased his subordinates. Now Iruka didn't doubt who was in charge in their group, and they followed him eagerly, hanging on his every word as they conversed among themselves. Like they were convinced the Jinchuriki hung the star and the moon on the sky. What the hell? His co-worker indignant muttering snapped him back to reality. You know him? Know him? He sounded incredulous at Iruka's query. Everyone knows that boy, and he trailed off, but I had him in my class for a while before. He got early graduation pass somehow. Iruka frowned. Somehow. If a prodigy graduated early, there was no somehow, they just did because there was nothing left in academy that could be taught to them. Dead last of my class, no good in anything except a bit in history. Somehow Hokage-sama arranged some sort of test to sponsor him for something and he passed, and I am glad to see the back of him. Iruka's eyes widened in shock. No good in anything, you said, but he just It didn't take a genius to put 2 and 2 together. The hostility and distaste of his co-worker, the talent and skill Uzumaki exhibited, and the resigned and condescending attitude from him. You sabotaged him when he was a student here. His co-worker sputtered. No I didn't, I just ignored him a little. I am not an idiot looking for trouble with Hokage-sama. In short, no obvious sabotage that could make Hokage revoke his teaching license. Iruka was disgusted and quickly turned on his heel, ignoring indignant sputter of his colleague. On the way back to tower, Naruto frowned, eyes narrowed as he struggled to recall a specific memory. Mikumo, who noticed his frown, turned towards him. Bespectacled eyes seemed to glint under the autumn sun. Naruto-sama? Is there something? Naruto shook his head, giving an assuring smile to Uchiha and Kagari, who looked equally worried after what happened in the academy. It's nothing, but, you see, what does it mean if I feel seeing that teacher again is troublesome even before I step inside the academy? And after I did see him again I realized. Realized? Uchiha echoed. I don't even remember his name, and in fact his face was pretty much forgotten until he opened his mouth and I made a guess from the familiar tone he said you to me. Naruto looked pretty bewildered by the revelation. In fact, now he was sure he couldn't even recall any face from his old class, at least until they showed their face and opened their mouth. Maybe not, now all he could recall was likening each of them to a vegetable, like one bully who liked to make fun of him. All he could recall was a sweet potato in the place of a head. Of course you don't, Naruto-sama. Kagari smiled pleasantly, they're not important. As you said, they're not worth it. Uzumaki chimed in. Naruto sighed, you know, perhaps the way I deal with people of Konoha is wrong. That caught their attention, their body tensed. Not caring about their opinion is just my way to protect myself. Or more like he honestly had no time to care, he barely interacted with anyone outside of his limited circle nowadays. In the end, to achieve my goal I have to change their opinion about me, and the tower. Their expression openly said they disagreed. Konoha is my home, even if the whole village hates me that will never change, and I love my home. I have people who died to protect her. His parents and Umbu protectors, those who love her enough to die for her. His closest friends. Konoha however is more than a place, the people living here also a part of Konoha. If I stop caring for them because they hate me and see Konoha as a place or an ideal, I will be no different than that warhawk. You're nothing like him. Uzumaki assured him as they felt the ripple of chakra caressing their skin, informing them that they had entered Tower's barrier. Danzo is a despicable man, Naruto-sama. Naruto smiled at her, but Uzumaki, the moment I forget Konoha is also the people living in this village is when I am going down that man's path, someone who sees Konoha as an ideal rather than home. But. And that is Danzo in a shell. He told them with a smirk, a man who loves Konoha more than anything and yet he has forgotten what is Konoha. Then who is Danzo then? Kagari asked. Aside from a power-hungry old man. Mikumo added, snickering. Naruto smirked, a very sad human being, and I would rather die than become someone like that. Nara clan's compound. It's troublesome and I can't believe Kasan wants me to try it. Shikamaru complained to his father. Shikaku sighed, wondering why his wife made it her life mission to beat their lazy posterior up to shape. She should have known when it comes to Shikamaru, forcing the boy to do something would just prompt their son to find a way to ditch it. Though among her countless attempts, this took the cake. Fuinjutsu class, of all shinobi art outside the main Nintai-gen? There was a good reason why the art was in bottom line in terms of number of specialists in Konoha's force. The time and effort spent to hone this art, the risk and mostly fruitless result didn't make it very popular. He was not blind at the mouth-watering prospect this art could bring, but look at Uzushiagaku. As soon as Konoha's back was turned, their eternal ally was demolished in fear of their Fuinjutsu. So you really are not interested? Shikaku asked, I will try to talk with your mother to change her mind if that's the case. There was hesitation in Shikamaru's body language and Shikaku frowned, well, it's troublesome. Shikamaru, the answer is whether you are interested or not in learning Fuinjutsu. You have made your opinion clear in the troublesome scale. Shikaku pointed out. At least 8 out of 10. Judging from the long drawl. His son scowled, I don't like troublesome things but. Fuinjutsu sounds like a troublesome puzzle that I can't leave alone. So he was interested, Shikaku had to applaud the seal master who managed to get his son's attention. But you're unsure because. I still have to train in our family's technique, and learning Fuinjutsu seems to consume lots of time. I am not sure I have the dedication and. I don't want an interest which would eat up my time with my best friend. So Chuji was the main reason, though aside from that Shikamaru was unsure whether this was what he wanted to do or just a passing fancy. Shikaku smirked, okay, I get what bothers you so, but Shikamaru this is the first time you show any interest in troublesome thing. Shikamaru scowled. And it's not a bad thing, but, you seem to have expectations you've not confirmed with the expert yet. So why don't you tell me who taught you about rudimentary theory today in your class, not to mention he was also curious about the seal master who got his son interested in a troublesome field. And I will contact the tower to get this seal master to come to our place to discuss it. His son nodded, all right, but if I think it's not worth it you have to help me with Oka-san. Shikaka grimaced at the prospect. Deal, so the name. He didn't give us a name for some reason, but I think he is pretty high up in sealing division and very young. Which if his father went to look, it was unlikely he would get the wrong person. The Jonin frowned. A paranoid type, why do you think he is high-ranked? He knows how to teach, which means, he has been teaching before, and that says he has large repertoire as a seal master to be given such privilege. Academy instructors was the same, and I saw him together with other seal masters when they walked in and out of Academy's gate. They fell a few steps behind him, like he was their leader. Shikaka raised an eyebrow. How does he look then? His son narrowed his eyes, recalling the person in mind. He seems to be in his early teenage, around 12 perhaps. He has blonde hair, but in a vivid shade unlike Yamanaka's pale one. I was sitting behind, but I am sure his eyes are blue. Strangely, for a person who claims to spend his time a lot outdoors, his skin has a healthy-looking tan. It almost didn't take more than a second for Shikaka to conclude who the mystery teacher was. He is also good-looking enough to make fangirls in my class squeal so hard as soon as he was out of the class. It's pretty impressive how he could keep them quiet throughout his lesson. Then again, he kinda has this air that gave no room for us to butt in unless he allows it. That reminded him a lot of another blonde who, when ranting about Fuinjutsu, couldn't be stopped and they could do nothing but listen. Well, Shikamaru. I think I know who the boy is, though. Why, Shikamaru was under impression the boy who supposed to be a few months younger than him was older by a few years. He had no clue. Konoha General Library. Like any place reserved for shinobi, the library was open for 24 hours because one never knew when ninja would come knocking at the dead of the night in need of reference. So Iruka took his sweet time to do his research, or so he thought, because apparently the clan he was looking for was not unknown from some backwater country. Uzumaki clan was a prominent clan in Uchiha, also known as the sister village of Konohagakure, that was destroyed in the Second War in fear of their expertise in Fuinjutsu. Not much was known about Uzumaki after the destruction of Uchiha, but they were widely known as the clan of longevity and life force, and their village gained the epithet, the village of longevity. The Uzumaki shared distant blood relation with the Senju clan, which explained their alliance with Konohagakure. Through the years, the Uzumaki and Senju kept close ties, with members at times marrying between clans. The prime example was Hashirama himself. Their Shodai Hokage married an Uzumaki named Mito. Shodaime's wife was an Uzumaki. That meant, the Jinchuriki was a relative to their Hokage. But then why was Uchiha not mentioned in their history curriculum anymore? Simple, to keep the origin of their Jinchuriki a secret. But if he is a seal master, then he was a good candidate considering he understood his burden and the seal work. However, that also meant, if he wanted to, he could. By Shodai, what had they done to that child? The Uzumaki seemed to take all negative treatment in stride, and downright condescending to some, but he mostly ignored them. Because to him, they were fools who see him as reminder of tragedy rather than someone who bore a heavy burden for their sake. He was right, they were not worth it. Uchiha main house. Sasuke pondered over what he had learned today, that his age group was offered opportunity for early specialization. His brother said they were lucky because aside from a few genin with obvious interest in some field, a lot of genin didn't know what to do with their career until they reached shinin. By that time it was usually too late to take interest in some field, like Fuinjutsu or Iriajutsu. Not because after shinin it was impossible to learn those, you would have no time to start from scratch by the time you were shinin. Then you will have a harder time to pass the jonin exam with no specialty to back you up, while all-rounder was a preferable trait, as a jonin being a jack of all trades was not. So Sasuke had given it a lot of thought. His brother was an all-rounder shinobi with proficient ninjutsu and bukijutsu. While he was good in genjutsu, that was Shisui's forte. Then what about Sasuke? He got A for main nin Taigen, but he was unsure which he liked more, taijutsu perhaps because he liked to move his body. Still, getting proficient in any three was what he had been trying to do since he entered academy, and it felt like he was getting nowhere to reach his brother through it. Which was no wonder, because every step he took forward, Itachi had leapt away before Sasuke got anywhere closer. So if he wanted to surpass his brother, he had to branch out and take this opportunity because his brother didn't get it when he was in academy. That seemed to be a logical conclusion to his dilemma, but in what? Kenjutsu? There was no division teaching it and his brother was good at it. Iraiajutsu? Not a bad choice, but there were too many girls interested in that because of their naturally small reserves and better control, and Sasuke didn't think he would enjoy being a medic nin. Other division that had been coming lately was cryptology, TNI, tracking, and Fuinjutsu. While he could solve riddles and codes just fine, he was not that interested to make it his specialty. TNI was a good specialty and he could help in KMPF if he did. Still, he couldn't imagine himself learning how to interrogate people or gathering information. He liked to be in action, not in a sense like that obnoxious Inuzuka, of course. So tracking was not it either. That would put him in the same field of interest as Shino and Kiba, and let's face the fact that the Uchiha were no natural trackers even with their Sharingan. That left Fuinjutsu? He didn't want to go with the last choice because he had nothing else left. Not to mention, Fuinjutsu is one field of study where your bloodline limit gives you no edge, said the Seal Master. Which meant Sharingan won't help him to learn it, but in other hand that would mean his brother's proficiency with Sharingan didn't mean anything in Fuinjutsu. Sure, there was a lot of theory and experimenting, but it seemed in Fuinjutsu age didn't matter. What needed was basically good hand coordination and sealing theory. Combat-oriented seal masters like Yuzuru Hasan were pretty strong, which meant Fuinjutsu didn't stop anyone from training their body. So perhaps Sasuke? Why, you're sitting in the porch when it's so chilly here, you didn't even wear a scarf and socks to keep you warm. His mother's voice snapped him back to reality. Sasuke pouted, it's not that cold, Ka-san. Then he sneezed, blushing a deep red. Mikoto grinned before wrapping a dark blue scarf around his neck. What did I say, Sasuke? It's already fall, of course it's pretty cold now. Not as bad as winter, but it was no season for wearing one layer of clothes even in Hai no Kuni. Sasuke sniffed, hi Ka-san. Mikoto smiled at him, what do you have in mind, Sasuke? You seem to be deep in thought. Her youngest son hesitated, Nisan said early specialization program we got is an opportunity, and he didn't get that when he was a student. So I have been wondering if there is anything I like to learn now from Shinobi Division, and I think perhaps Fuinjutsu isn't bad. Ma. Mikoto clasped her hands together, of course you may try it, but you have to be firm in your decision. Two good friends of mine were wonderful seal masters, and they worked really hard to get there. Sasuke frowned, I don't mind working hard, but Mikoto giggled, no, Sasuke, you're not going to be stuck in a library all day even if you decide to pursue Fuinjutsu. One of the seal masters I know was a very restless girl and sitting all day would drive her up the wall. Although Uzumaki were wired for Fuinjutsu like Uchiha was for Genjutsu, perhaps Kushina was not the best example. Do you think Oto-san will approve? Sasuke asked. The Uchiha matriarch resisted her urge to sigh. Why was Sasuke as the priority whether her husband approved for him or not for what he wanted? Though lately with Naruto's influence, Itachi was doing a wonderful job with being independent and carefree. So if Sasuke was looking at Itachi as an example of a dutiful son, he was sorely mistaken. In fact, Mikoto suspected Itachi had sneakily acted rebellious since he was forced to participate individually in Chunin exam. Sasuke, just do what you want to do. Sasuke frowned at her words. But I don't think your father will disapprove if you want to be a seal master. It's a difficult art that requires discipline and perseverance after all. Her youngest son beamed and Mikoto had to cover her giggle when Sasuke's stomach growled. He blushed adorably, what's for dinner, Ka-san? It's nabe, perfect for the chilly weather tonight, but you see. Itachi hasn't returned yet with the grocery and dinner is still 1 hour away. Sasuke deflated, but I do have a tomato in the fridge for you to snack on while waiting for dinner. He brightened up at the prospect, thank you, Oka-san. Mikoto laughed softly, your wel dash. She paused, head craned towards their front garden. She was a pretty good sensor so he could tell who was coming. It's Itachi, it seems he brings Shisui and dash. Sasuke didn't need to be told twice as he rushed towards the front garden, yelling, Nisan, welcome home. And proceeded to hug his brother, tackling the older Uchiha's midsection. It took a while for Sasuke to realize they weren't alone. There was Shisui-san, his cousin, who was looking at him with a grin. However, there was someone he didn't know, looking at him with a slightly surprised look. The stranger had the most vivid hair color resembling a yellowing leaf in this season, and eyes so blue like it mirrored the sky. He looked so contrasting, standing between his brother and cousin with their pale complexion and dark hair. It took a moment for Sasuke to realize the stranger was not completely unknown. The only difference was that the white shirt with a kimono-like collar was covered by a white coat this morning, and he was not as intimidating when Shisui was hanging all over his shoulders like a sloth and holding a basket full of vegetables. Sasuke. The youngest Uchiha blushed a deep red, realizing he was showing un-Uchiha-like behavior in front of a stranger, and quickly let go of his brother. Itachi just chuckled before responding, "I am home, Sasuke." "Yo, Sasuke-chan." Shisui greeted him, and Sasuke bristled at the childish suffix. Ignoring Shisui's snicker, Sasuke focused his attention to the blonde between them. He smiled at Sasuke in the way that was almost alien to the Uchiha, with how open and bright the smile was. So unlike a shinobi, but just this morning this person looked pretty imposing to the point that not even Kiba dared to interrupt, and held their attention in an iron-clad grip. "Hello there, I saw you this morning in class, didn't I? Uchiha Sasuke-kun." Shisui chortled. And since he is not keeping a facade of mysterious teacher with a classified name anymore, he really should introduce himself properly this time. He sighed, "To be fair, I am not asking for their name either. Do you have any idea how hard it is to grab the attention of over 39-year-old? Sasuke felt like he should feel offended that his attention span was questioned, but Sasuke had to admit, because they didn't know him at all other than he was a seal master, they became so curious of the guy. Heck, Shikamaru was wide awake, Anara, that was a praiseworthy strategy. Itachi chuckled, and Sasuke was surprised again with the fond look and smile Itachi wore on his face. "I am sure you have seen him this morning, Sasuke. Let me introduce you to him, this is Uzumaki Naruto, our teammate." "Nisan's teammate?" He didn't seem to mind Shisui weighing his shoulder, shrugging. "Sasuke-kun," he called, inclining his head slightly. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto. It's a pleasure to meet you again." Mikoto didn't even notice her hands was trembling slightly when she heard an unfamiliar young voice from the front door of their house. She stilled her resolve to act normal, playing the role of a good host instead of an aunt longing to see the nephew she could only see from afar. There he was, taking off his geta while chatting with her oldest son. At the first sight he was strikingly alike his father, but now that she could get a better look she could see Kushina at the shape of his eyes and face. When he noticed her presence, she could tell he was hesitating and hide it well enough for untrained eyes but not hers. He looked nervous but also determined in the same time, she could see Kushina in him. He gave her a deep respectful bow, from a clan heir to another clan's matriarch. "Good afternoon, Uchiha-san. Thank you for your kind invitation." However, unlike Kushina, his voice even when nervous came as even. She was almost tempted to laugh when she saw Minato's smile on his lips, the smile he claimed could smooth out even the trickiest situation. Apparently their son was not below using his bright smile and pretty face to charm people, just like Minato. He was really their son through and through. She smiled at him, "Welcome to our home, Naruto-kun, it's our pleasure to have you with us." She returned his polite greeting graciously. Trying to ease the tension, she added, "Though I am sure I asked my son to buy grocery for dinner before our honored guest for tonight comes, here is my Itachi bringing our guest with him and carrying my grocery to boot." Itachi looked slightly sheepish, but she was sure her son was also unrepentant about it. "Well, today we got a good deal with vegetables we harvest from the tower's garden, so we thought we might as well pick up our guest early." Shisui, her favorite nephew, quickly added, "We also bring you a cook assistant, aren't we great?" "Huh? Uchiha family's kitchen." Naruto understood this was their way to ease the tension and smoothly getting him to know her mother's best friend better. Even in their best day, Itachi and Shisui failed subtlety when he was concerned. Which was the downside of being best friends, subtlety was one of the first thing thrown out of the window. Tuck, tuck, tuck. The sound of knife against the wooden cutting board was still pretty soothing. Although, "Ma, you're very good at that, Naruto-kun." Itachi's mother gave him a warm smile as she paused from cutting spring onion. He was used to the respectful eyes of his vassals, fond look of the Hokage and the accepting gaze of his friends. However, the adoring gaze of a mother was very foreign to him. "Ah, thank you, Mikoto Obazan." He had wanted to call her with a more formal honorific but she didn't let him. He supposed that a familiar way of addressing was the least of his worries. "So, what's your favorite ingredient for nabe, Naruto-kun?" "Ah, I am impartial to daikon, and skin tofu pouch with mochi," he answered as he helped her to prepare the soup stock. "Adding grated daikon makes it sweeter." She giggled, "Ma, it sure does, Itachi especially loves it sweet. Though not so much in Sasuke's case. We can even the taste with butter," he added before he could stop himself. "Or soy milk. That sounds healthy and nice, indeed." And more than anything he didn't want to send the wrong message with sounding like a housewife, but it seemed it was already too late. Especially when the words sweet and healthy were mentioned in a short span of time. Gradually, their topic devolved to Itachi's and Shisui's eating habits. Living room. So the guest Okasan was waiting for his Naruto-san. At first he wanted to call his brother's teammate Uzumaki-san, but since his mother jumped to Naruto-kun, it would sound weird if he did. He wondered if his father was going to call him familiarly too, but that would be weird for his formal father. His brother nodded, "Yes, we have been working together pretty often for a long time, but we're only slotted to as an official team just 2 weeks ago." Sasuke didn't know the detail, but he knew his brother hadn't been in a permanent team in a while. No one talked about it out loud, but there were clansmen whispering about Itachi leaving his teammates in dust and that they couldn't catch up, which caused the team to break apart. He also heard Shisui-san was in the same position as Itachi, drifting from one team to another, and the only reason why they had not been teamed yet was because there was no two-man team in Konoha. So his brother and cousin at last found their third teammate. And as expected of them, Naruto-san seemed to be a capable shinobi and fit in like a piece of a puzzle with them. "But why is he cooking in our house with Oka-san?" He couldn't help but wonder, and she sounds like she is having fun. It was not said out loud, but it was obvious Sasuke was confused by the instant liking their mother had for Uzumaki Naruto. Itachi smiled weakly at that, while Shisui looked left and right before leaning in. "It's a secret, but you can keep a secret, right, Sasuke?" Sasuke nodded eagerly, "Yes. Of course." Itachi sighed, then again telling Sasuke part of it was safer than not telling at all, rather than having his brother poking his nose into where it doesn't belong. "You see, Uzumaki is a prominent clan and they have a lot of enemies. Currently Naruto is the only Uzumaki in Konoha." It dawned on Sasuke that apparently Uzumaki Naruto was an orphan like Shisui, and even worse, he didn't have his clan with him. Shisui continued, and a relative with classified identity of his was Mikoto Basan's friend. That sounded like a pretty simple circumstance by shinobi standards, the standard clan children's protection policy, so it didn't surprise them that Sasuke just nodded and ate it up. 1 hour later. "Shisui-kun, Naruto-kun. Eat your fill, don't be shy, we even have ramen noodles for extra if we finished other ingredients." When Shisui nodded and dug in right away, Naruto hesitated before picking up his bowl and chopsticks. Inwardly he noted Shisui acted more subdued in presence of the Uchiha clan head. Apparently Shisui was Uchiha enough to act refined in front of Uchiha Fugaku. "You know, my clan head Itachi's dad, so I gotta be in my best behavior." He had been introduced to Uchiha Fugaku before dinner, and the stern man, while not as friendly and warm as his wife, was not unpleasant, just pretty stiff with him. He tried to call Naruto Uzumaki-kun, but a look from his wife made him switch to Naruto-kun. Which was weird. Naruto never understood Itachi's parents' relationship with his, especially his father and Uchiha Fugaku. There were not many memories of them that he had seen, in fact most of the time they were just repetitions. They weren't overly close, but his father was quite fond of Itachi's father for some reason and got exasperated fondness in return. "Naruto, talk please. You shouldn't keep your mouth shut." Shisui's glare conveyed what he wanted to say enough. The Uchiha wanted Naruto to begin a conversation, but for the life of him Naruto couldn't find a topic to start with. Naruto-kun. In the end a conversation did start by Mikoto Basan, who if Naruto didn't know was his mother's friend. he would suspect was interrogating him thoroughly with a motherly tone. She asked about his hobby, which he answered with gardening and designing seals. Which got him a fond sigh, remarking how he and Itachi were both workaholics and anything work-related couldn't be their hobby. The question then moved on to what he planted in his garden, which ranged from a bush of clover to exotic orchid from the moon country, which was nothing compared to the well-sculpted garden of Uchiha's main house. Naruto liked gardening, yet he didn't do landscaping and let his plants to grow however they liked. So the dinner ended, and with Mikoto washing dishes and refused Naruto to help again, he was left sitting in the Uchiha family's living room with his team, Fugaku and Sasuke. Shisui, it seemed, was still fixated on him starting a conversation with either Fugaku or Sasuke for some reason he couldn't comprehend. Seriously, since when he was a good conversationalist in casual talk. He and Itachi were similar in that regard, they were good at talking about work, politics, and history, but outside of that, he was even worse than Itachi, simply because the pool of people they could talk casually with was embarrassingly small. Shisui should have known and helped to start one, since this awkward silence made him reconsider excusing himself already. Naruto-san. Unexpectedly it was Sasuke who started one. Perhaps not, the kid tried to act refined like an Uchiha should, but he was still a kid and a curious one according to Shisui. Yes. Uzumaki-sensei, who came before in my class, said Fuinjutsu is divided to many different branches, and most seal masters chose to specialize only in one or two, so in what branch of Fuinjutsu you're specialized in? He asked. And here Naruto thought he won't talk much with a new person. My specialization. That was an unusual question to be asked to him, to be honest. I guess I don't focus in any particular branch of study. In practice-wise though, security and enhancement seal are the most common. He began to explain. In research however I study whatever interests me, as I have basic theory in all the branch covered. Sasuke's eyes widened. So, you're a generalist then? Uzumaki told them such thing too. I have been classified as one, I suppose. In short, a seal master who had mastery in more than a few branches in Fuinjutsu is a generalist. It said nothing about his talent actually, more like being practical in what he need rather than personal interest. The first time I heard such classification in regards to you. Shisui couldn't help but comment, but since you're good in security seals, shouldn't you be a specialist in that? He shrugged, taking a sip of his green tea, and noted the Uchiha had a good taste for their tea. It's just that the most common use of seal is security purpose. Most seal masters in my division are adequate at it. If we likened it to general shinobi arts, it's like 3 basic ninjutsu from academy. Is storage scroll a basic seal too? Sasuke pressed on. He is more interested in Fuinjutsu than expected. What a surprise. Naruto couldn't help but think, it was unusual for an Uchiha. Perhaps because Sasuke had not awakened his Sharingan yet? The reason Fuinjutsu was unpopular with Jujutsu clan Hyuga's birdcage seal didn't count was simply because to their eyes, Fuinjutsu didn't become more understandable, unlike other shinobi arts, as if it was written with different language but with the same letter. They could read it to an extent but couldn't comprehend the meaning. Naruto shook his head. It does seem like a basic seal, but storage seal is actually under the category of time-space seal. It's one of the more complicated branches of Fuinjutsu, and storage seal is the fundamental seal formula of this branch. It's ranked C, which means anyone can make a storage seal following standard design, but tweaking it takes a master. Shisui nodded sagely, which explained so well why it's expensive. Naruto's sweat dropped. I designed yours myself. You have no right to complain as you get them for free. Then he turned his attention back to Sasuke. Are you interested to learn, Sasuke? Itachi asked. If you do, I am sure Naruto won't mind answering your questions. The youngest Uchiha in the room tensed at that, hesitating. I am curious and dash. Naruto didn't miss how Sasuke's ebony orbs darted from his father to Itachi. His sweat dropped. So there was a drama of neglected spare heir in this house, and when the heir was Itachi. Well dash. Fuinjutsu is not a field fit for passing interest, Sasuke. Fugaku spoke for the first time, startling them. Sasuke fidgeted. I am just wondering. It's a high-risk field of study to learn. Fugaku added, learning foundation alone could be done as long as you have discipline, but taking it further than that is entirely different matter altogether. If he was not a seal master, Naruto would have thought Uchiha Fugaku was underestimating his son even before the boy was trying, but he was one, so he knew his field was one where half-baked apprentice died a fool's death in a workshop instead of on a battlefield. It was no place for a child to prove himself to his parents. Sasuke shrank. Yes, father. A shame. Regardless of his reason to turn to Fuinjutsu, the boy was quite eager. Then for some reason the Uchiha clan head sent the boy to his room, saying it was getting late and he had school tomorrow. Naruto was pretty sure it was not that late, and merely an excuse to get the only minor in the house out of the room. At any rate, Naruto-kun. He didn't get why there was a tint of hesitation in the way his name rolled off of Fugaku's mouth, which be readily blamed to his demented social skill. As we Uchiha and police force work closely with the inner defense of our village, aside from our duty to manage security of our civilian population, we're considering to recruit members of the sealing division to our ranks to operate better with Fuinjutsu-based security in Konoha. Work and alliance. Another familiar ground he couldn't help but pounce onto. I am sure Master Hakure can arrange something. In fact, he had been waiting for this, and with Itachi's and Shisui's suggestion, he already had some suitable candidate in mind. I also believe Master Hakure would arrange formal meetings to discuss our schedule and updating security details. Fugaku frowned thoughtfully. Updating? And how does this concern us from KMPF? You see, Fugaku-sa. He was interjected by a smooth, Naruto-kun, there is no need to be so formal even if it's about work. Mama. Naruto's sweat dropped. Is it just me or do I sense a hint of threat? He laughed nervously, glancing at Fugaku, who didn't seem to be fazed by the interruption. Yes, of course. Mikoto-basen. Why was he scared of defying Itachi's mother more than he did Hokage or Iemitsuji? Naruto wondered. So it's like this, Fugakuji-san, there is a plan to update the security seal system of our village with an unspecified timeline in the future. More like overhauling the whole old system and replacing it with a new one, which had been delayed for years due to a certain smiling bastard called Aizen. However, like any seal on a gargantuan scale, it was covering the whole village after all. The seal components are scattered all over the village and over 40% located in the civilian sector. Because spies and infiltrators more often than not are disguised as civilians rather than ninja. Which is a great concern to us because we don't have experience in crowd control, and some maintenance and test has to be done in daytime. Daytime, why not at night when no civilians would crowd around you? Shisui asked. The seal system used currently is ancient, so feng shui is also involved. To be honest, Naruto disliked this kind of delicate seal, because you couldn't wrap logic around it. It concerns the balance of yin-yang chakra of the seal. It's the matter of precaution, and when dealing with a delicate system like this we can't be too careful. Fugaku frowned. You seem to be under the impression that it will take a long time. Naruto looked sheepish in his response, which is why I said unspecified timeline. At the fastest it would be 1 year, but it could be double of that if we can't debug the system quick enough. The more complicated the seal is, the more unexpected glitches we could run into. But why now? If the old system is still working, the tower doesn't have to rush it. Itachi added, curious since this was the first time he heard about it. The Jinchuriki side, it's another problem we would like to discuss as soon as possible, but I think it's for the best to warn KMPF now. There is a problem with the current system. Apparently, the barrier division claims there are disturbances with the seal, but we can't find anything wrong with our seal. They're not malfunctioning or anything. Barrier division, a group that at the first glance was part of sealing division but was completely different, like Root from Umbu. They were a group of shinobi formed to run the barrier system, Kami no Mi, Uzumaki Mito, created in the founding era of Konoha. In simple terms, they were the operators to sealing division's technician. Naruto himself only visited them a couple of times while accompanying Hakure, and their relationship with the barrier division could be summarized in one word. Horrible. 3 group of shinobi in charge of Konoha's inner defense discounting regular force never had amiable relationship with each other. The sealing division felt like foreign workers, and sea barrier division is a group created to decrease their role and failed short because while they could run the system, they couldn't maintain the system, a sentiment returned equally by the barrier division, all the while KMPF kept to themselves as if they had nothing to do with each other. To be honest, Naruto was surprised Konoha was still standing with such a poor dynamic between them. It was getting better between the tower and KMPF, but not so much with the barrier division. Fugaku frowned. Should we tighten our security then? We would love you to, considering we're still uncertain of the current condition of the barrier, but we would like to keep it as quiet as possible rather than rousing panic in our civilian populace. Increasing number of patrolling police force was bound to make civilian restless. He nodded, knowing very well that to the village's defense there was nothing worse than a restless population. Then I shall tell my subordinates to be more vigilant. Well, it didn't go as well as whatever Shisui had in mind, considering this supposedly light-hearted talk devolved to their work. Naruto, however, never had a high expectation of himself when it was coming to being sociable, so he counted the dinner as smashing success, no matter what Shisui said. Seriously, his older friend was getting ridiculous these days for some reasons he couldn't comprehend. It was late and Naruto had gone home in a pretty good mood. So he had no idea what a tight spot he had left his friends behind with simply being himself. So, dear son of mine, and you too my beloved nephew, care to explain yourself? Mikoto, don't be so harsh on them, I am sure they have their reasons. It was odd to see Fugaku being the one who had to pacify his wife. And I am not sure I will like their reasons, hiding this from me. He is my best friend's son, and even if this is the first time I met him. Because of that Hokage and his meddling counsel. He is already like a son to me, and your precious teammate. Mikoto sighed, I am not surprised to meet a very mature child, considering his hard life, and I have met my share of children forced to mature before their time. Her son was the prime example. However, Naruto-kun seems to be not even aware of his age. He had been in Sasuke's class to teach, so he should have known Sasuke was his age, and yet there was no awkwardness or slightest hint of self-doubt when faced by a normal child his age. He didn't question how different he was, and naturally acted as an older figure to Sasuke. That was not normal, as even Itachi, from what Mikoto observed, feels different and awkward when faced by a less mature child his age, uncomfortable by the reminder of his much older mental age. Shisui sighed, well, we suspect you will not react well to this revelation, Mikoto-san. It can't be helped though, since explaining Naruto's mental state is just going to be confusing if you never met him in person. So you're not denying you're stalling to explain it to me? Mikoto narrowed her eyes and the two flailed to explain. Itachi shook his head. But rest assured, he is fine. Hakure Dano requested the Yamanaka clan head himself to evaluate his mentality. Which was a discreet affair, and calling in a clan debt, the Yamanaka clan head agreed to keep the result a secret. Aside from being mentally older, there is nothing unusual from Naruto by shinobi's standard. Though from his evaluation, they found out Naruto was very good in compartmentalizing his memory and thoughts, which was why he was able to keep his mind clear in spite of the unhealthy environment he grew up with. Basically, Naruto pushed all negative thoughts and memories to the very back of his mind, which was why he had such a bright and sunny worldview prior to his incident. It was a kind way to phrase that the Jinchuriki was so positive to the point of borderline delusional. Though Shisui and Itachi weren't going to inform his parents about it. Especially the part where Yamanaka Inoichi cried in front of them after his session with Naruto. Though because of that, they got a reliable ally on Yamanaka Inoichi, not just because he owed them after the fiasco with Danzu. Itachi. Fugaku started, being older mentally than your physical age, like your mother said, is not uncommon, especially for shinobi. However, how he interacted with Sasuke, who is his age, is not normal. So don't make him sound fine when he is not. Mentally older children wouldn't treat their peers as a child, and tend to look down on their childishness. Naruto, however, genuinely treated Sasuke as a much younger child, but interacted with Itachi and Shisui as their equal in spite of considerable age gap. Shisui shifted in his seat. We will confess, we screwed up a big time. He resisted his urge to flinch at Mikoto's narrowed eyes, at first. Naruto was pretty normal for a kid. It's pretty funny how we met him, and getting to know him afterward. Our late Umbu captain pretty much set us up as his playdate. It was an amusing idea at that time. When I first met him, Naruto was not so different than Sasuke, mental age-wise. Though because of his unique position he was more open-minded and skeptical than most children. Itachi added, recalling the skittish child who reluctantly shared his private space with Itachi. Shisui scoffed at that. At least back then I still can think Naruto was a kid and he was Sasuke's age. I could totally relate Naruto and Sasuke from time to time as adorable brats with a lot of things to prove. Shisui drawled on, it was a very gradual change back then and we waved it off as stress. He was under a lot of pressure from his former teacher, the tower, and himself to get his foundation study finished as soon as possible. They weren't as close with Naruto back then, so it was hard to see the change. Then a simple issue came up, he had a hard time to make time for physical training. His teacher back then was teaching him intensively, and it really frustrated him. So without thinking twice, I taught him Kage Bunshin. Mikato's eyes widened in shock. That was one of Kushina's favorite jutsu, but even the redhead avoided overusing the technique for one reason. She didn't want to age mentally too quickly, which was why she used it sparingly outside of battle. It sounded like a great idea back then. Shisui flailed, besides he couldn't use more than 10 at a time. Then he was getting better at using Kage Bunshin. Naruto perhaps already surpassed Nadime himself in the mastery of Kage Bunshin. Itachi added. By now he even barely feels the mental strain. Which is also why he didn't notice, and we didn't either. We forget Naruto is much younger than us. The age gap just shrunk as time passed and by now it's odd to remember he is Sasuke's age. Shisui trailed off, it just happened. Then that incident with Aizen happened, our captain and the rest of Team 2 were killed in action. It was the shock of his life, to find loyal shadows who had been protecting him for so long were gone, killed by his former teacher. Naruto might have never trusted Aizen, the man reeked of distrust since their first meeting. However, it would be a lie to say Naruto didn't look up to Aizen even slightest as a seal master and disciple. In spite of everything, Aizen was the first teacher who was seriously devoted in teaching Naruto fairly, and to some extent Aizen did love Naruto as his student. It was proven in their confrontation, that in spite of many chances to kill Naruto, Aizen never tried to kill Naruto with all his power. Naruto was well aware of this, and until today some part of him wished Aizen didn't choose revenge that brought nothing but pain and destruction. That was perhaps when Naruto decided to quit being a child. Itachi murmured softly. Though even before that, Naruto already felt he couldn't stay a child, he didn't have that luxury and perhaps never had. The death of Team 2 and Aizen's sealing was the last straw. But Kasan, I would like to think, in spite of everything, he is truly happy with his current self. Shisui nodded, well, happier than when he was a child. He didn't deceive himself that the world was always a bright and sunny place to keep his mind sane anymore. And I would like to think that for Naruto to be content with being himself, normal or not, is more important. He was fine with being weird. Itachi inclined his neck towards the general direction of Sasuke's room. True, perhaps to Naruto, Sasuke would never be more than my brother, or classmate, against what you and Kushina-san hoped them to be. Sometimes I even feel guilty that I took that position away from Sasuke. Naruto was a loyal and caring friend, and it was hard to find someone like that in your lifetime. Itachi was lucky enough to find Naruto and Shisui. But more than anything, I am glad I am his friend. Itachi admitted, he is perhaps one of the few I couldn't help but be selfish about. Even from Sasuke, to me, no one is perfect on their own. Even he who was hailed as a perfect prodigy. That's why we gravitate towards each other to make up for what we lack. I think we started walking in the right direction only after we were together. Shisui grinned at him, and that's what we are to each other. He finished. Mikato smiled, in the end, our sons became good friends as we hoped, Kushina. I can't complain. Shisui grinned, not that we will stop Sasuke from befriending Naruto. He assured Mikato, whose eyes softened at her oldest son. Though, Naruto has this interesting view about kids from his tutoring experience. There were children in the tower, and Naruto tutored them from time to time. At the eager look Mikato shot them, Shisui answered. He is idolized by kids in the tower and they trail after him whenever they get his attention, so he thinks they are kinda like puppies that are eager to please and learn with short attention span, so he has to be creative with them. Which explained why Naruto inserted some drama this morning when teaching Sasuke's class, even though Naruto hated drama, but he said some drama and mystery always kept kids curious. Huh. That's what happens when people in the tower want to ensure their future generation's loyalty to Naruto, and think getting him to babysit them is a wonderful idea. Shisui rolled his eyes. Apparently it was a long-standing Uchiha's tradition for Uzumaki clansmen to babysit their vassals' children. They had to admit that was one brilliant and manipulative idea to ensure loyalty of the future generation. Itachi glanced to the side, recalling. He is good with children, but his incapability to relate to them makes him think they are some sort of alien yet fascinating existence. Though he liked them fair enough, judging from how eager he was to pamper little Atla and Mew whenever he could. Mikoto didn't know what to think that their wish, Kushina's, and hers wouldn't go like they imagined them to be. Well, from what I see he seems to like Sasuke fair enough. Sasuke was Itachi's joy, but from what Shisui saw, the younger Uchiha's interest in Fuinjutsu played part to get Naruto's attention. He and Itachi had a rather lackluster interest in Naruto's art in spite of being his teammate, though Naruto did teach them some fundamental trick to not be completely hopeless at it. At any rate, Sasuke seems to develop some interest in Fuinjutsu. Do you think Naruto-kun would mind helping your brother, Itachi? Mikoto pressed on. Sasuke was going to learn Fuinjutsu, for real? The brat would have a long way ahead of him. Shisui thought. Mikoto, you know that Fuinjutsu is a dangerous art. Fugaku interjected. Hush, dear husband, have some faith in our son. Sasuke is a hard worker, don't you see the burn mark on his hands? She reminded him, he is working hard to master Gukaku no Jutsu, and he keeps up with his academy lessons too. He is a determined boy. I am sure Kushina would approve of Sasuke learning her family arts. If he wants to try, let him. If Uchiha was alive, she was sure the Uzumaki would rope her sons to learn with Naruto. Fugaku's eyes softened. If you say so. Itachi's eyes widened. He was so focused in work lately he didn't know the injury on Sasuke's hands were from practicing their signature Katon Jutsu. He felt guilty. Heaving a sigh, Itachi drawled on. I agree with you, Oka-san, let Sasuke try. I am sure Naruto wouldn't mind lending a couple of basic material for him to start with. Mikoto beamed. Oh, will Naruto teach Sasuke if he joins this Fuinjutsu Foundation class? Itachi smiled at her hopeful expression. On occasion perhaps, their program consists on giving various teachers to teach the class. Because there were a lot of subjects to cover. But I think Naruto would be one of the less frequent one. Or not at all, he is an active researcher and also combat seal master. He is more on demand in field than in class. The Uchiha matriarch frowned at that. I am glad to hear he is doing very well as a seal master. His parents would be very proud of him. It was a shame Kushina couldn't teach her son personally. Mikoto knew Kushina wanted to bequeath her clan's legacy to her son herself. But I am worried, he is already a Chunin, isn't he? Getting too busy can't be good for him. It was so obvious she wanted to mother their teammate, Itachi, and Shisui thought. Her eyes narrowed at them. Oh, Naruto-kun is one of those workaholic, isn't he? Someone who when given a complete day off with no training would find themselves nothing to do. Mikoto eyed Itachi pointedly. He has hobbies. Shisui offered, ignoring Itachi's glare because he made it sound like Itachi didn't have any. Is any of it unrelated to Fuinjutsu? Mikoto asked in a genial tone. Shisui paused at that. All his hobbies from gardening, cooking and reading at some extent involve Fuinjutsu. Unfortunately, Naruto had this habit to incorporate seals to anything he did, like the latest elemental seal to cook meat with specific heat he made. No. She sighed wearily. This was what happened when Minato had a son with Kushina indeed. Kushina had this strict rule to not bring work, which meant including Fuinjutsu, to her kitchen. Minato on the other hand had no such restraint. In short, hobbies to Naruto one way or another would be work to him, which made their son just slightly better than her Itachi. I thought so. She harumphed, bring him over for dinner again as soon as you can. Itachi, Shisui dear. Mikoto said in a motherly tone, a warm smile caressed her lips. That was not a suggestion, but an order. It seemed from now on dinner with their family was going to be a routine for Naruto whether the Uzumaki liked it or not. When they brought it up the next day, Naruto responded was a flat what and then he asked what Mikoto Abasan would like to cook next. Apparently within one single night his mother managed to put the fear of mother's love in Naruto. The Uzumaki didn't even think to run and resigned himself to dine with them as a part of his routine. Few days later. I came to pick you up for a joint team training. Shisui announced before he dodged the incoming projectile called Taro, courtesy of Atla. Huo Atla-kun, watch where you throw that thing. The Shiamatsu child glared at him, which was the farthest thing from scary because of his doe-like eyes and puffed cheeks. He looked as intimidating as a hamster. Humph. It reminded him of Sasuke whenever the younger Uchiha was upset with him for borrowing Itachi. Atla was the second youngest Shiamatsu child, with lilac hair and green eyes that Shisui noted was second dominant coloring in the clan. If Uzushio is still standing now, the village must be full of people with brightly colored hair. Konoha had their fair share of bright colored hair, but most still have dark coloring native to Hai no Kuni. We're digging sweet potatoes today. And we're planning to have a lunch together afterward. Atla told him with a pout. And you come to take Naruto-sama away for training of all things. He said it in a tone that suggested Shisui had committed a crime against humanity, and for Atla, it probably was. Shisui rubbed the back of his head guiltily. Well, Atla-kun. I am preparing for my Jounin's exam after all. And he had been delaying it for so long. And it's good for Naruto too, after all he wants to get his promotion sooner or later. Atla didn't seem convinced, and continued glaring adorably. It was as effective as a lamb's glare. Crap, if he glares at me any longer I will lose it. Shisui thought inwardly, shoulders shaking with mirth. Naruto came just in time, falling in slow motion courtesy of Hikau no Fun not far from him and Atla. Not far behind him, Uzumaki appeared beside him with a crane-like grace. Oh heyo, I am ready to go now. He told Shisui before turning towards Atla, whose expression had morphed to wide-eyed innocent look like a harmless bear cub. Ah Atla, you are sending me off. Naruto-sama. Atla cheered as he hugged the Uzumaki's waist. Have a safe trip. Naruto smiled at the Shiamatsu child, and ruffled his short lilac hair fondly. Thank you, and have fun today with the others. Hi. Atla chimmered as he reluctantly let go of Naruto. Naruto turned to Uzumaki. Well, then. I am counting on you then, Uzumaki. Uchiha main house. The training ground was closer to Uchiha compound than to the tower, which was why Shisui opted to pick Naruto up first. He was greeted by the same scene, in which Sasuke was hugging his brother's neck and begging for Itachi to spend time with him, while Itachi continued putting his shoes on. But Nisan, I want you to teach me Shuriken Jutsu. Sasuke whined. You promised. I am sorry Sasuke, next time alright? I have a training with my team today. Itachi twisted his body a little so he could poke his brother on the forehead. Oh yig. Sasuke whimpered, holding his forehead. Shisui grinned sheepishly when Sasuke glared at him and Naruto. Sorry, Sasuke-kun. He raised his hand in greeting. I am borrowing your brother for today. Humph. His cheeks puffed like a chipmunk and Shisui struggled to not laugh at the cuteness. Not fair, Shisui-san. You keep stealing Nisan. I steal. Shisui choked out, covering his smiling lips. Oh my god, twice the dose is too much. He already got this in the tower and now again. Naruto was not helping. Shisui, if you laugh now he will hate you. The blonde sang, just loud enough for Shisui who was standing beside him to hear but low enough Sasuke didn't. Shisui quickly clamped his mouth shut, as Itachi made his way to them but Naruto approached Sasuke closer. The youngest Uchiha looked wary when approached but then Naruto whispered something to him, and Sasuke's face lighted up in instant. Any. Shisui couldn't see Naruto's face from where he was standing, but he was sure as hell Naruto winked just now. Sasuke waved his hand enthusiastically at them. Have a safe trip. Nisan, Naruto-san. Oh, and Shisui-san too. Why am I an afterthought? Shisui protested. On the way to training ground 37. So what did you say to Sasuke? Itachi asked curiously. Naruto smirked. To make up for today, his Nisan is going to bring him to the first Fuinjutsu class in a few days. You will also give him a tour. Itachi stared at him long and hard. Really? I don't remember having permission to wander around the tower without you around. It was a rule in the sealing division, even his teammates weren't excused from it. Ma, students like Sasuke-kun will only be allowed in first floor where their class is. Fortunately they had plenty of rooms to be turned into proper classrooms. And on the first day we will just be covering some rules and giving them an idea of what to expect in class, so afterward you can borrow our training ground to teach him those shurikenjutsu. I don't know how long you have promised to teach to him. Itachi looked sheepish at the last part. I understand, but dash. Naruto frowned at him. You think we didn't notice? Shisui rolled his eyes. That you always try to avoid teaching Sasuke-kun advanced stuff, and seriously, what gives you the idea if you do, you're turning Sasuke-kun to second you. Itachi blushed red at that, embarrassed he was caught by his friends. I am just. And did you forget who was teaching you all those advanced stuff for academy students? He pointed at himself. And I did because you wanted to get stronger. Shisui added, scoffing. Sasuke-kun is not you, and not turning to you just because you teach him some techniques. Naruto chuckled softly, that's so adorable of you though, protecting your brother from the expectations of your clan. Itachi frowned at him. But, I think you shouldn't ignore what Sasuke-kun wants, even if you think what he wants is not good for him. Perhaps, maybe what I do is not helping Sasuke after all. Shisui nodded, I am glad you reconsider, just start on helping Sasuke to achieve his dream. It's a great start, don't you think? Itachi smiled at Shisui, yes, and Shisui, I think you will make a great Jonin. Shisui beamed, is that so? Naruto smiled indulgently at the Shushin expert, I agree, you have been delaying your Jonin exam for a long while even though you've earned recommendation. Still, is it true some of these joint exercises are hidden Jonin exams? Ma, it's just rumor, but unlike Chunin exam that is a spectacle, our Jonin exam is more discreet. Shisui explained. The Chunin tested wouldn't know it's a test. The seal master hummed, I suppose that it makes sense to be discreet. Jonin are highly experienced shinobi with great individual skill who serve as military captains after all. In general a Jonin is also expected to be able to use at least 2 types of elemental chakra, proficient in genjutsu, and decent taijutsu skills. Itachi listed on. Shisui frowned, by right Itachi will be qualified soon, you just don't have enough missions recorded in regular force yet to be recommended. As for Naruto, he trailed off. What about me? While I took a lot of mission than most. Courtesy of being a seal master on high demand and not minding taking a lion's share of outside job. I am not in hurry for another promotion. Beside, my mastery of Sutin is still so-so, my proficiency in genjutsu and in dispelling them with help, and to get to Jonin level of taijutsu I am still too young. That was the downside of taijutsu, no matter how talented your body, it still had to mature to master it. No, I mean, haven't you passed requirement for Takubutsu Jonin in Fuinjutsu a long time ago? Shisui pointed out. I mean, with the wide use of your seals nowadays in our forces. I suppose. Naruto shrugged, but there is no point for another promotion, if all I get is more privilege in my division. I mean, I am an Uzumaki. He already had plenty of privileges as a seal master. Never mind about me, there we go. Training Ground 37. Training Ground 37. It was one of the training grounds that was far different than typical forested one or meadow available in Konohagakure, a swamp forest with trees up to 200 feet but thinner trunk, shrubs, and moss. That meant the tree was not for perching, and hopping on them would need more chakra control to not break the trunk, or the tree would launch you like a catapult. There were few areas like this in Hinokuni, making this training ground an unpopular choice. Shisui whistled, plenty of hiding place but mobility is severely limited, hiding your tracks is also difficult. Because one careless step on soft soil you would leave a nice footprint to be admired, behind. Itachi agreed. Not to mention there is plenty of moss on trees that also would give away our track. And the water is full of crocodiles too. Naruto pointed at the river where a bird that landed on a floating log found the log was very much alive with a set of deadly teeth. Ahahaha, sometimes I wonder why we never get complaints from civilians about these dangerous guys wandering to their bathtub. Shisui beamed. Naruto rolled his eyes. Thanks Mito-sama for that. She and her sealing squad warded all training ground containing dangerous animals so they didn't get out of their habitat by accident. Naruto. What? Your division is underappreciated, aren't they? Considering general population thought they were scholars rather than shinobi most of the time, and most of their role in Konoha was overlooked. And overworked. Between their routinely job for their village, their own research and commercial mission outside. It was no wonder Sealing Division drank coffee like water. What gives you that impression? Naruto wondered sarcastically. Beside Dash. Their conversation was halted when they sensed more shinobi coming to the training ground. From the number, it was 2 more 3-man cells. Unlike Shisui's team who came early, they arrived just right on time. Yo! Shisui raised his hand in greeting when a red-eyed Chunin appeared with Shushin before them, followed by her teammates. Kurenai, Aba, Hayas. The kunoichi named Kurenai zeroed in on Naruto in an instant. This joint exercise is exclusively for Chunin, right? Shisui rolled his eyes. My teammates are all Chunin including the Chiba number 2 Oof. That comment earned him 2 elbows on his side, courtesy of his Chiba teammates. The Chiba part is unneeded. Naruto grumbled before he inclined his head slightly in greeting. Ohayo, I am Uzumaki Naruto, nice to meet you. He didn't sense any negative feeling coming from them, aside from bewilderment perhaps. They also most likely were mentally counting how many years had passed since Kyuubi's attack and came up with a single-digit number 9. Nice to meet you too, Naruto-kun. I am Uchiha Kurenai. Her teammates followed her example. They tried to be subtle but they looked bewildered at the sight of him and Itachi. The next team arrived via Shushin, and Naruto recognized one of them, Iwashi, who was also part of Yondaime's guards. He was also a seal master in study, and well on his way to get his certification together with other members of Hokage guards. The other 2 were regular Chunin he saw on occasion guarding the west gate. Kotetsu, or Kozetsu something. He remembered the other had the same name as a member of Humra though, Izumo or Yada. Naruto-kun. He inclined his head in greeting. You're joining us too, huh? Ah yes, since Shisui is my teammate. He craned his neck at a beaming Shisui. It's my first time in joint training, please take care of me. Iwashi nodded, while inwardly he was sighing. He had joined one training session with the Sealing Division, so he already had a taste of standing on the opposite side of this team of prodigies. Shisui's team was a nightmare. He fervently hoped whatever this training or exam he didn't care which entailed it was not a straight combat or shinobi version of hide and seek. Well, Naruto dash. Only to find the spot the Uzumaki occupied seconds ago was empty, and he was already inspecting the ward seal surrounding the training ground for who knows since when. Then he realized the rest of Shisui's team was already by Naruto's side. Kurenai's left eye twitched. Well, if we doubt he is not a genin or academy student before, when did when did they move? Iwashi didn't know about Itachi and Shisui, but for Naruto? He blames Yondaime Hokage. By 9 years old the kid was already so damn fast, it must be genetic. Then again the old team was chasing the kid since he was old enough to walk. Go figures. That's it for part 10. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.